What's up? Welcome
Hey,
to the Mind Design podcast. What's up, Brian?
hey, Ron, how you doing today? My Design Blueprint Podcast. I love it, where we talk about everything and anything from the East Coast to the West Coast.
Yes, absolutely. So, um, I kind of spoiled it because I said your name. I wanted to let everybody know that we have a very special guest today, Brian Marsolais,
Well,
right next to me.
thank you very much.
And so,
Love being
Brian, yeah, I love having you here as a guest. We should do it more often. I have some questions that I wanted to ask you today, personally. And I think that the audience or whoever may be watching this could also benefit from it because they have to do with real estate. Because I don't know if we've talked about this much on the podcast, but Brian runs a very successful electrical business. He's also got some properties, some rental properties. So, and for me, I've never owned a property. I've only just rented. And so your area of expertise when it comes to this is like miles beyond where I'm at. And so I wanted to ask you, like, first and foremost, when you first did you buy a home before you bought a rental property, like a property that you were going to use as an investment, or did you like what was your like state of mind there? And like what did you do? Like what did you do first? Buying your own house or a rental property?
Yeah. So you're a little broken up. You're a little bit broken up, Ron, but I think the question was, did I rent before I owned property? Is that pretty
Right.
close to it?
Yeah, but also, did you buy your own home first before you were buying real estate specifically for investment? And just like what your thought
Great.
process was around there
That's
at
a
the
great
time.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I'll give you like a brief history of what happened to me. I came from a nice family. I love my mom and my dad, but my parents had split up when I was young. And what happened was my dad paid for me when I was 18. The minute I turned 18, my dad stopped paying for me, which my mom, School of Hard Knocks, loved her to pieces, right? She's passed on now, but she said, "Hey, I'm going on my own." And that means you're going on your own the day I turned 18. So, right out of the gate, I just started renting apartments and having roommates and whatever I could do to get by at 18 years old. Now, I have a lot different of a life than a lot of people out there. A lot of people can live at home for, some serious years. I know people who are late in their 20s still living at home. I had no choice. It
Right.
was sink or swim for me. So I rented till I was in my mid 20s. I tried to save as much money as I could because my my dream was to own my own house. That was like, back then the American dream was to have your own home. So I saved up enough for a down payment, and yeah, I bought a house, my house firsthand, and that's how the journey began. I was in my late 20s. I think I might have been 30 even when I bought my first house.
Okay. And when you saved up for that down payment, did you save like the standard 20% of like the entire house? Because that's what I hear
Yeah,
everybody
I
saying that you want to put down.
yeah. I love that question because, for me, my first property I bought, I think it was 130,000, if you can believe that. And it was a nice place. And I only had to put 5,000 down. First time
Okay.
homeowner and all this other stuff. Things have changed a lot, in my opinion. You got to
Right.
put a lot down. All my investment properties after that, you have to put down 20%. Common. That's just a common mortgage number for investment properties.
Right.
So yeah, I was lucky for my first house. I didn't need a lot of money to put down. And I always looked at it, well, if you can save enough for a down payment and be able to have that property, then you get benefits of the write-offs for that property, but also whatever you're putting into it every single month when you sell that property, there's a good possibility, a real strong possibility that you're going to get your money back that you put into it. And that's, to me, that's always worked, you know?
And
Actually, yeah, go ahead, Ron.
when just real quick question on that, when you say the money that you put into it, are you referring to just making mortgage payments, or are you talking about
Yeah.
also like upgrading the property, or all of it like combined?
Yeah, yeah. Great question. Like, I'm the type of person that, of course, I own an electrical business too, and I know a lot of different things, how to fix up homes and things like that. So, sweat equity I would put into my homes. And,
Gotcha.
because I want them to look really, really good on the outside and inside. So, I'd put a lot of sweat equity into it. And, you know, whether you're putting so much on a down payment and you're paying your mortgage every month, chances are you're going to get that money back when you sell it. I personally, I like owning. When you're renting, like, let's say, you're renting right now, Ron, right?
Hmm.
Well, you're paying someone else's mortgage is what you're doing. And
Right.
for me, I always wanted someone else to pay my mortgage.
Right. See, that's what I want too, and that's why I'm asking this stuff, because long term, what like what what I want is, whether they're short-term rentals or whether they're long-term rentals and multifamily, like, duplex, quadplex, eventually small apartment buildings. I was looking into all this stuff recently, and I thought, with the kind of mind that I have, I thought, why start at a duplex? Why don't just buy an 8-unit apartment complex? And then I looked for some that were available where I'm at, and I saw the price of them, and I was like, okay, well, that's like 3 million. And I learned that for apartment complexes, banks want to see 30% down. And so I was like, okay, so like I'm looking at like 500 grand ish out the door just to get the loan to be able
Yeah.
to buy this property. I mean, the good part is they already have tenants. You know what I mean? Like, there's people already in there. It's built and it's operating. It's like buying a business when you're buying an apartment complex. But then I thought, like, wow, that's going to take a long time to save. To save your
Yeah,
way
yeah.
to 500 grand. And then that's when I thought, okay, well, maybe it would be smarter to buy, um, maybe just a duplex. The price of, because I'm in California, so all this stuff is inflated, right? And
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
maybe just buy a duplex. That's like the price of a regular home here, but it's like smaller living quarters. You have two people there. You're managing that, practicing managing that, and then they're paying off the mortgage. Over time, some time goes by, and then continue to save, and then you can take equity out of the duplex that you own with your savings, and then apply that to something, maybe another duplex or something with some more units, then work your way up to the 8 units, to be able
Yeah,
to
I
have
mean,
that
I
deposit.
you know, I think that's a great way to build wealth. I've had two families. I make money on them. A lot of people say stay away from two families, go to three family, three, five families and up. But I've done
Mm,
well, in that category with two families, and I live in one side. Someone else is paying my mortgage, and I'm building up a bunch of equity. Then I take the equity out and I can buy another property.
right.
So that's,
Okay, so when you own duplexes, right? When you own like two family, you stayed in one of the units and rented the other one out. Is that how you did that? Or did you
yeah.
stay
The
somewhere else and
first
you were renting both of them out
no,
at the time?
I stayed on one side, and I just, had one mortgage paid for both of them. But the people that were renting from me always covered my mortgage. I mean, almost covered it, so you're living for $100 a month or something in mortgage money.
Right.
So and to me, now you're like, okay, so now I'm sitting on something that I've had for 20 years, right? The thing's paid off. I put hardly any money. I put a lot of money to fix it up, maybe, but I didn't pay the mortgage. Someone else paid my mortgage the whole trip. So,
Right.
you're just making money. And
Now
then
you
like later on, if you want to just keep it, the property's paid off. Say you're making $2,000 a month per side, right? Let's just keep it simple with a two family, okay? So,
right.
say you're charging 2,500 for rent on each side. So that's 5,000 that's coming in. Well, you've got taxes to pay on that, but your rent is always going to cover everything. Your taxes, your mortgages, and if you don't have a mortgage, now that's coming right into your pocket. Now, I don't know about you, but with the, Social Security and things like that, like I want to create my own wealth and I want to make sure my wealth is coming in versus Social Security coming in to pay when I'm older.
Right.
So,
Right. And because it's just more, in my eyes, it's more dependable. A bunch of politicians can have a meeting at any point in time and then decide that Social Security is getting lowered or dropped or
yeah.
it's out of our control. Right. And there are some things that are out of our control as far as like the housing market and things like that too. There's always elements of that, but I lean more towards what you're saying as well, and that's why I'm interested in this and asking these questions. And a lot of stuff that we talk about on the podcast here is like, hey, if you want to do something you haven't done, what do you do? Ask the people who've done it, and they're usually more than happy to tell you what they did. And
Yeah,
so I
and I mean,
figured this would be a good opportunity.
you know, that's exactly what I did, Ron. I just asked other people, and people are willing to help you along. You're talking legal write-offs with real estate. There's so many benefits to it. I mean, the hardest challenge that people have is saving the down payment, especially now. The economy is, go buy a bag of groceries, so it's $130. So
Right,
to me, there was always more advantages to investing in real estate than anything else. But I'm the type of guy, I like to touch my investments versus, and I still have them, but mutual funds and stuff like that, you're kind of, out of control out of that a little. It could all sink. I mean, but so could real estate, right? But real estate's
right,
always been good to me.
right.
Yeah.
I really like the idea of having somebody else pay your mortgage, and so this is kind of like my plan right now and why I'm asking these questions. Like, as
Yep.
you know, I'm going to school for accounting. I have my internet-based business. Really, I'm looking at that right now. Like that, what that did was like help me understand some core business concepts to take to, because I want to play business at a bigger level than the internet business game. And that's why I'm like, okay, I'll take 4 years to get my degree in accounting and get a CPA and license. And what I want to do is get my CPA license, and then I want to, like, you have to work for a firm usually doing audits and stuff like that to get your license. But I've wanted to be in real estate for years, and so I think that like it would be great if I can become an accountant for like a real estate investment company or
Yeah.
something like that in the real estate side. And so I'm doing accounting, I'm managing books, I'm understanding like cash flows and how all of that works for other properties while getting paid to do it, because it's my job. And and saving at the same time so that when I do find a duplex or maybe three family, whatever, that I want, I can put the down payment down and do it. And I also know how to manage the finances for it and what the book should look like for it from doing that work in my
Yeah.
quote unquote day job, the whole time. That's at
Hmm.
least the plan right now.
Well, I think you're a lot like I am. You're a very control type of guy. Like you like to be in control over, you know, y- your all your businesses, your real estate, whatever. Well, not maybe real estate yet, but one of the advantages of owning real estate, unlike stocks and mutual funds, like your real estate investments, you have more control over. I don't know if that is making sense, but like you make your decisions on what you want to do to upgrade the property. You make the decisions on how you want your leases to be, and it can impact the property's value over time, but you have a lot more control over the investment. And that's, you still got to look at it like a long-term type investment, unless you find something that you say, oh, I can flip that thing and crush it,
Right.
which a lot of people do that as well. So, for me,
Right.
for me, real estate has always been my biggest, my largest gains in investments.
Yeah, I really like the idea of I don't really want to get into fixed and flipping, because it's
Yep.
not. It'd be one thing if I was a general contractor for
Mm.
decades, then it's like, well, I know how to fix. So like that's one side of the equation, right? But that's not my story. That's not my story, right? And what I'm really interested in is the amount of tax write-offs that you get for owning one property, right? I'm not sure what the number is, and I'm not a tax expert, so don't take anything that I'm saying here as like that this is the law. I'm not a lawyer, right? Neither is Brian.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So get that disclaimer out right away, and I know it'll be in the description of this video too.
Well,
But
let's just hit on a couple things, right? On tax benefits, which I'm sure if you haven't learned it yet, you will. Like I said, you're going to school and you'll see how the wealthy get wealthier. It's because, like as a real estate investor, you could take advantage of various tax deductions, even mortgage interest, right? So mortgage interest, property depreciation, right? Operation expenses. These are benefits that can really reduce your taxable income. You know what I mean? I don't know if
right.
that's, why people do it. I know that's certainly why I did it. And once you get that ball
So
rolling,
it sounds like that first stage that I was talking about, where I was like, okay, I'll be working as a CPA. CPAs generally make decent money out here in California, like 70, 90K, sometimes 100K a year and up, depending on where you're working. But working as a CPA and then owning something like this, does it reduce your taxable income, like the taxable income for the business that owns the property? Like, let's say an LLC owns the property, or what if it's just my name on the property and not like a holding company that I own? Does it
yeah, yeah.
reduce my personal taxable income? I mean, no matter which way you slice it, it's still going to reduce that same amount of income, whether it's from the business that I own or
Hmm.
myself, and that savings is there. But I'm just curious if like, does it? Because this is what I'm wondering. I'm thinking like, oh, if I'm working as an accountant and then I buy a property and there's tenants in there and they're paying the mortgage off, all of a sudden, am I going to get like a nice refund check at the end of the year because of these tax credits of this property that I own? Because I'll be paying, my taxes and having them withhold if I'm a W-2 employee.
Yeah. Well, if you have a business that's renting property, that's going to that business that's you set up that's renting property, you're you're either going to break even or you're going to collect a little bit of money on a check, every week for yourself, just like a business. However,
Right.
whoever that property is in, whether it be your personal name or slash your business name, is going to get the advantage of the write-off. And maybe you just draw a little income off of that property, and then the rest is just building money in a bank account or a index fund or something of that nature. But whoever that property is in, and you're going to figure, I have accountants that do that, so you're a step ahead of me. I pay accountants to do all that stuff, you know what I mean? But they'll tell me where to put
Gotcha.
whatever
Yeah.
legally, it's all legal. It
Right.
has to be because, there's you just never, you never want to do things illegal, but that's the great thing about having real estate. It's a legal write-off.
Right. For anybody who don't, it's a legal write-off.
Exactly, there's nothing, I mean, it's legal. That's why people do it. I think, like President-elect Trump, I remember when he was debating Hillary Clinton, he said, I don't pay taxes because I'm smart. I use the same
Right.
system that your friends use. That's exactly right. It's like he probably doesn't pay tax. I don't know. I mean, I didn't look at any of that, but he probably knows, or his accountants know, how to legally write things off. And so do
Right.
most wealth people in the world. That's how they get wealthy. They're
It's
putting
so
money
funny.
into they're putting equity, they're putting money into their properties, and they're having legal write-offs.
Right. And it's so funny how I'm sure that we've all seen like people up in arms about how like wealthy people aren't paying taxes. And then they're like, people are mad and about it. And maybe I used to be one of those people before I started understanding this. I used to be like, that's not fair. But what I understand now is like we're all, whether we like it or not, we're all playing the same economics game.
Mm.
They're just playing it a certain way, but nobody's restricted from playing it that way. It's like we
Yeah.
could all do that. Like you can save, even if you just save and you buy your own you buy a property for yourself instead of just renting. Like you're going to get
Yeah.
tax write-offs as long as you have somebody who knows what they're doing your taxes instead of just instead of just trying to turbo tax it yourself and you don't
Yeah.
really know like accounting and stuff like that. You buy a property, like have somebody who knows what they're doing with accounting and with taxes do it for you, and you'll get write-offs because of the fact that you own
Yeah.
the property that
Yeah.
you just live
Exactly.
in.
And it's legal. I mean, it's a legal write-off. Now, I don't know how people do it. You hear of people saying, well, I didn't pay taxes or they didn't pay taxes. I've always paid taxes, but I've also taken advantage of being able to write off some of the money that I made because I've reinvested it into the property. Now I'm reinvesting it, making the property
Right.
worth more. So am I really losing that money? Not really. And then it appreciates
Yeah,
over
because
time.
if you reinvest it, and
It's a pretty simple thing.
just to
The
point this out for
challenge that
anybody who
people
may
have,
not know this is, so the one thing that I wanted to point out really quick is that I understood when you said that because I know that a business isn't taxed. A business is only taxed on the net income that they make. So, like for anybody watching, if you own a business and your business makes, let's say your business makes 10 grand in a year, like you just started it, that's all the revenue that came in. But your business expenses were 8 grand for the year. Well, that means that you have $2,000 of net profit, right? And that means that the government will say, okay, that 2 grand, you just made 2 grand. Now we need our taxes out of that 2 grand. But if you took that profit during the year and you said, okay, well, I'm going to spend this on other things that will help the business grow in the future. Well, now your business, even though you reinvested it into the business and you technically made zero profit, so there's not a tax on that. And so that's what Brian was talking about with reinvesting back into the like
yeah.
real estate or back into whatever it is that you have.
And, I think there was a period of time where everyone said, oh, Jeff Bezos doesn't pay taxes, right? And he's, I don't know, worth billions, but there's legal ways that they do it. And I mean, hey, if the system is set up and it's legal, then by all means use it. Learn it, use it.
Yeah.
It's set up it's set up maybe for the rich, but you can become wealthy by using it.
Yeah. And the other thing too that I found funny when I started learning this in accounting class is that he may not pay income tax. Maybe that's what he doesn't for himself, but uh, Amazon is definitely paying a lot of taxes. Like as
Mm.
far as payroll tax. I didn't understand this till I started learning accounting. I didn't know that the same taxes that I pay when I work for a company, whatever I have to pay for taxes, my income taxes that are taken out of my paycheck and they get paid, the business owner has to match that. And so when you have
Yeah.
employees that aren't 1099 contractors, they work for you W-2,
Yep.
um, then all of your W-2 employees' taxes for the whole year, you match that. The company matches that too. So it's
Yep.
like Jeff Bezos is paying some taxes. It might not be income tax, but they're paying
Yeah.
some taxes, you know?
That's exactly right. It might not be his personal taxes, but he's matching his employees' taxes, Social Security taxes. I mean, believe me, he's just take. I don't care what it is. Take the fuel it takes to drive the Amazon ship, right? That's all taxable fuel, you know? He's definitely paying
Right,
taxes, but personally, you get breaks, but when it comes to real estate, it's like anything. When it came, people used to always say to me, climb the corporate ladder. I don't want to climb the ladder. I want to own the thing, right? So it's just like in a business. So yes, I'm matching taxes, Social Security taxes, workman's comp, health, all
right.
whatever it is, right? But you've got to be
Excuse me.
smart enough to say, okay, this is how much. Uh, let's just take a number. A $40 employee costs me, right? It might cost $80. So you better be getting $150 an hour for them. And it's the same, it's the
Mm,
same thing with your mortgages, but it's on a monthly basis. You already know how much your mortgage is, because I'd recommend a fixed mortgage, but that's just me. I like being in control of everything. You know how much that mortgage is going to cost you. You know how much you need to make for rent, and it's just that easy. And then even if you said, well, I just want to break even. Okay, you're breaking even, but are you? You get the legal write offs and your equity's going up on your property because the planet's not getting any smaller, let's face it.
right.
And you
Every
might,
time you pay that, every time that mortgage gets paid, more and more of that property is actually yours.
that's absolutely right. And you know what? You might go through some times where you don't get as much for rent, but it's always going to cover that mortgage. And you might see times where you go up in rent. Like I've had some great tenants. I'm not going to go up on their rent because they're great tenants. I want
Right,
them in there. Just keep paying my mortgage down. Thank you.
right,
you know?
right. And
Yeah.
I heard something like, and I think of this as far as like accounting, but I think of like, okay, what about like those times where because there's gonna be work that needs to be done on the property, whether it's like there's a clogged
Hmm.
pipe, you got to call a plumber out, washing machine breaks, appliances need to be replaced, roofs get
Yeah.
damaged, and normal stuff that happens in everyday life. Um, so I heard something along the lines of, and I can't remember where I heard this from, but I heard like whatever your mortgage is, you want to make sure that you're making for each property, like let's say if it's a single home that you're renting, you want to make sure that the mortgage is covered plus like I think it was like 500 on top of that so that way you can like bank that for repairs in the future. I think it's just a rule of thumb. It's not like a rule that you have to do, but I think that that's smart. Making sure that you're collecting a little bit more than the mortgage every month and not for profit, not to spend it, but to have it sitting for when those repairs do come up.
Yeah.
It's like you have the reserve ready to go for it. And if they don't come up by the end of the year, cool. You know,
Absolutely. It's a little broken up, your voice right now, but I think you're saying, you know, try not to spend the money you're making. Try to just keep a savings on it for that in case there is like, repairs, major repairs like roofs and things like that, which,
right?
again,
Exactly.
right? Again, yeah, put the roof on. It's a write off though, you are going to write that off, and that's just one of the advantages, the legal advantages that people take when they own real estate.
Right. We just had a couple months ago, the place we moved in to this place about 6 months ago, and shortly after we moved in, a plumber had to come and replace all the plumbing under the house from all the plumbing from the bathroom. It was like I don't know. It was a big job. He was here for days, just under the house all day, every
Yeah.
day. Um, and I was like, "Woo, okay." Like that's expensive. And at that moment, I was glad that I'm just renting. I'm
Yeah,
glad
I
that
mean,
all I have to do is unlock the door for you.
yeah. I mean,
But that
there's a
makes
lot of
sense if it's written off.
yeah, there's a lot of people out there who will say you're better off to rent because you can make more, say, in the stock market than you could on a mortgage over time. And you can see that point. You can see that point. But I've always argued the fact is you're you're losing your write-offs, right? You're losing
Hmm.
your write-offs for one thing, which is pretty heavy, and then you're going to be paying someone else's mortgage. You're not getting that money back. And not only that, you have to be very, very disciplined. Like, let's say you're saving $1,000 a month because your mortgage payment would have been $1,000 higher than your rent. Okay, let's just take that example. If you have that extra $1,000, you've got to be disciplined to put it in the stock market every month. And it just
Right.
things come up in life. They just do. Now, you could argue the fact too that, well, why don't you just invest your down payment, right? And that's another fact. But like, to me, and I have stocks. I recommend index funds to anybody out there, but um, because they outperform everything that I've seen. But you know, you've got to have some serious discipline if you're going to do that. And another thing, you don't know what that stock market's going to do. Things things can change in that very rapidly. And to me,
Right.
I like real estate, especially for the long haul.
Right. And what what seems just so cool to me is being able to have three, four properties, however many, right? And have them paid off, the mortgage is paid off, and having tenants in all of them that are just paying, they're not paying the mortgage anymore, just paying me. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, that's like, and then from that, it's like, so now there's more profits because there's no more mortgage. And if I feel like I don't even feel like managing these properties anymore, guess what? Just hire a property manager to manage all of them, and that way my phone's not buzzing when the dryer breaks. Like they just handle that, and like that seems really cool to me. It's like I don't even
yeah,
think I would want to sell it. And the whole time you can see that the property value is going up and up and up because that's what real estate does. It may drop down when the market crashes, but it's going to go back up. It always does because, like you said, there's there's no more space being added to the planet, right?
hmm,
So when you own property and when you own land too, it's the value of that's going to continue to rise. It's not like back in the day when we got on boats from Europe and came over to
yeah,
America and then just decided that this is our land. And guess what? Even though we did that, it wasn't other people were here. It was theirs.
yeah,
So, but yeah, there's not that much to just divvy out like that
yeah.
anymore.
It's
And so
yeah,
I think it's to me, I feel like I'm getting started even being interested in wanting to save to do this late because I'll be 40 next month, and now I'm like, all right, I want to save and own some real estate, and like should have thought about this 20 years ago, but it's like the same thing when they say the best time to plant a tree is, right? Best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. Second best time is right now. And I feel like it's the same for this stuff too.
yeah. I mean, there's creative ways you can get down payments as well. Owner financing and things like that. I've always just
Right.
put my head down and saved the money, from way back. But I did it way back, so that gives you a little bit of leverage. Now, 40, you're a young man. I mean, in my eyes, right? I got 20 years on you. You can create unbelievable things in those 20 years. Unbelievable.
Right.
But it's like I said,
Yeah.
like take right now, you're paying someone else's mortgage, and that's okay. I mean, I hope you get a great deal on rent.
Yeah,
And
we did
yeah,
for this house.
yeah. So, but if you want to get a little more control of your finances, I recommend, renting, having real estate, having two, three, five families and rent them. Um, I
Yeah,
have, one of my sisters, I think she has 8 rental properties right now. They're all paid off. I've learned a lot of stuff from her as well, but she's just loving life, right? So
yeah, and that's the thing too, is like that I've learned over the last few years, because I got into the whole internet thing of like and selling digital products online, because I'm like, all right, I want to like make money and figure this out, and and I got some skills from that, right? But I've learned in that process through people that I've connected with that the wealthiest people out there, they're not wealthy because of a specific skill that they have, that they like they may be really good at finance, like finding deals or something like that, and they make, like, for example, you can be a real estate agent that only sells high-end properties in the Hollywood Hills and Malibu Beach area, right? You're going to get big checks every time you sell a property. But the difference between like those people and like the like really wealthy people are the ones who, the wealthy people just own things. Like
yeah.
they don't sell expensive stuff. They buy expensive assets and they don't get rid of them. They let them just keep cash flowing for them, and then they
Mhm.
figure out a way to get another one, and then they figure out a way to get another one, and
Yeah, exactly.
and yeah,
You see, I think, Ron, too, what happened to me a long time ago was, whether no matter what it was, I always looked at it, well, how is that an investment for me? Like, and then I look at it things like, okay, if I'm putting $100,000 down on a property, how long is it going to take me to get my 100 grand back? So everything that I I do is okay. If I'm putting money into this, like when am I going to get that money back? Everything's always about a return, and it becomes almost like a game. And that's a game that you win. You win at the game because of the like we just talked about, all the legal write-offs for it and things like that. Real estate's a great way to hold on to your wealth. It just is. If things get like inflation goes up, what happens? Your rent goes up. I look around at some of the what people get for some of these rentals. It's astronomical. You're like, wow, they're getting that much for that. You can't even believe it, but they get it. And the whole key
right.
is, anyone can play the game. You just got to have that courage to do it and do your best to save up and and I know like a lot of people out there might say, well, that's easy for you to say. Well, it wasn't always easy. I worked really hard to get it. But, right now, I couldn't imagine what it's like to bring up 3, 4 kids, just the grocery bill alone. So, you know,
Right.
it's one of those things that I look at it realistically too. It's like, okay, how, if you're in California and you need to save, 20% to buy a house and your house is $1 million, well, that's a lot of money to put
Right.
down in a
Right.
economy that's, but you can do it, you know,
And
and
also, I wanted to remind some people, like, yeah, you totally can do it, but there's also creative financing. Like you mentioned, like seller financing earlier. Now, I'm not going to talk like I have experience in finding a seller finance deal, but I know about it, you know?
mm,
And
yeah,
so there's other options that, like, let's say that you wanted to just buy a duplex. You're renting a house, like me. I'm renting this two-bedroom house, right? Me and my girlfriend and our pets, and we wanted to even just downgrade the living situation, not to save money, but so that we can get into something that we own. And we get a duplex that's smaller than this, but we're like, but somebody else will be paying the rent. We own it. And It's like, well, I'd have to save 200 grand to be able to buy this duplex. Well,
Hmm.
there are other things that you can do, like you can talk to the person who is owning the property if they're a motivated seller, if they're selling it because they need cash flow for some reason, like
Hmm.
they just need the deal to go through and they need to offload this property. Now, it might take some work to find somebody like that. So it's like you have to have perseverance and talk to a lot of people and then see if they're willing to do a specific deal with you where they're basically the bank. You don't have a bank involved. And
Yeah.
you do
Yeah.
like promissory notes and things like that where
Yeah.
you say like, hey, I'm going to pay you this much. I'll pay you 50 grand today because that's what I have. And then you can hammer out any deal you want with them. You can say, and what we'll do
Yeah.
is we'll pay
There's
you
definitely,
50% of what we
creative.
take for the rent.
Yeah. There's definitely creative ways
Yeah,
to leverage that down payment as well. I've never had to use that, so I'm not a expert by any
I
means,
haven't
but I
done any
have
of this.
heard
So.
people do it. And another thing too is, remember this. Let's just take a simple duplex, right? The amount of money that you're getting for rent applies to your income when you go for your mortgage. So, like I said, there's lots of ways to do it. This is just a tip of the iceberg, is what we're talking about. But there, you know, there's great benefits to owning real estate. In my opinion, it's always worked. It has always
Yeah.
worked for me,
Well,
So even if you're a tradesman, or even if you know certain things, how to fix things up, you could save a ton of money doing that. So fixing it up
right,
yourself, there's a lot of benefits for that.
right, right. Well, I appreciate you helping me out and answering some questions about this stuff because yeah, I'm really interested in this. My plan
Hmm.
is just to save anywhere between, depending on what my income looks like when I get out of school, but I want to be like putting away 2 to 3 grand a month, just every month, like clockwork, living just below my means, whatever, and just putting that away, maybe in
Yeah.
like a high yield savings account or something like that, and just keep that going in there every month, every month, every month, and then once I get to 100 grand, I can start looking at
Yeah.
duplexes and see what I want to do there. I was thinking about this because I was like, well, what if I just kept doing that in the high yield savings account? And I just didn't do that. I just left it in a high yield savings account, kept depositing that for my whole life. And I looked at what it would be after like 40 years. And it would be like 2.5 million or something like that.
Yeah.
And then I thought like, yeah, but then you'll be 80 years old and you spent your whole life not wanting to get an expensive coffee, because you're like,
Hmm.
nope, we're keeping everything all buckled up. And I was like, I don't like that. I was like, I'd rather like save that and then deploy it somewhere where that helps me like make more money later and then keep doing that. I think when I'm thinking about it, I think the first property will probably be the hardest one to get to because it's like you got to save and get that down payment in, and then you got to get the property and make sure that there's tenants in there and everything is all above board, and then you have to spend some time paying the mortgage down so your equity goes up in the property. But once you have a lot of equity in it, and then you've also still been saving your personal income, that's when it's like the world is opened up now because
Yeah.
like you can take a loan out against the equity and or pull the equity out, match it with some of your other income, and buy
Yeah.
a bigger property with more units, and just keep doing it again and again, and it speeds up.
Rinse and repeat. It's funny because the only time that I've actually ever felt like I lost money, and I've gained money on the sale, like I crushed some of them. But the only time I felt like I lost money is when I sold them.
Hmm.
This one property that I had, I thought I got this great, I sold it for like 60,000, I think, at the time. But I said, oh my God, I crushed this thing, doubled my money in a short period of time. Well, 2 years later, the same property sold for 459. So, you know what I mean? I missed the boat on that one,
Yeah.
you know?
And you're like, damn it. Should have
Yeah.
just held on to it and let it like let it keep making me money while I'm holding on to it.
Exactly. The thing was paid. I could have just rented the thing, but I didn't go with my philosophy. I said I'll take a little cash out here. But that,
Yeah,
what are you going to do, right? You can't look back either. So,
right. And that's I mean, even when I think about it, I'm like, that's a lesson that I would love to learn. That's like,
yeah.
um, that's a good. It's still, it's like, but I get it. Once you're at that level, it's like, it still feels like a punch in the gut, even
Yeah.
though it may not. It seems like a favorable experience for maybe like 18-year-old Brian,
Yeah.
but for where you're at now, when you experience that, you're like, damn, because that's the thing. We always want to keep growing and improving, and so, but yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
That's
really
just
excited
human behavior.
about
You
going
know,
down that road.
you just want to grow and
Yeah,
grow, but live and learn. And I think once the track that you're on, once you go on that track, whenever you're spending money, you're always like, well, what's my return? And that automatically starts happening. You know,
hmm.
you'll start looking at a single family house and you'll be like, that's the last thing I want because I have to pay for the thing, right? There's no one there to
Yeah,
pay for my
me,
mortgage.
just me.
Yeah. So you just look at things a little differently. But yeah, I'm
Right.
excited.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the conversation when you buy your first one.
Yeah. We got a little ways, but it's in my mind and it's gonna happen. That's the process, right? Visualize, think of it, feel the emotions, remember it, do stuff differently in the world because of that. And then one day you'll be like, wow, can't believe it just happened.
Yeah. Oh, it'll happen for
Yeah.
sure. Just keep, do the techniques in our just go out, do the techniques that we've talked about all the time in previous, podcasts. I mean, the stuff works, and I
Yeah.
wish I could say I invented it. I didn't, but there's a lot of people that have shaped my life, and I just love giving back. I'm not asking for anything. I just want to give back, and I don't know how else to say it other than God's been good to me, and I just want to return that favor.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love it and I appreciate your time and sharing what you know with me and with us. Yeah, and I look forward to talking about when I got some deals on the table and sharing that stuff with you.
Yeah,
Yeah. Cool. I think this was a cool episode. I like talking about this stuff and I appreciate you. Yeah, you just sharing what you know. Nothing could nothing could really match life
yeah,
experience like that. So for anybody watching, if you found this helpful, let us know in the comments. If you got more questions, real estate questions, investment questions that you want to direct to Brian, just
yeah.
put them down below.
No
We both
problem at
check
all.
the comments, so we'll see him.
Right on.
All right.
Hey, always a pleasure, Ron.
Always a pleasure, Brian. We'll see you guys in the next episode every Thursday, 3 p.m. Pacific time when these come out. If you're on the East Coast, that's 6 p.m. And
Yeah.
if you're anywhere else, you can use Google and figure out when it's happening for you. See ya.